Welcome to this training screencast. In this session I'm going to be covering data stores, and this really is just an introduction. So we're going to be looking at the old ways of storing data versus the new way of storing data, fixed tables versus generated tables. So the data store is all about generating tables, and then we're going to look at some of the key benefits. In a future session I'll be looking at some advanced topics like how to create an index, how are the keys in the table used, how to set up constraints, and all the different types of load logic that you can apply to the table, like strong versus weak merging, etc. I'm not going to use InfoStore for this training session. I'm just going to be kind of going over a diagram and explaining all the different concepts. So if you look at a diagram here of the existing InfoStore and how it stores data, we have a data warehouse table with a whole lot of fixed fields on it. So if you go and look in the database, this is what you'll see. So go and look at like fund data and you'll see lots of text fields, lots of number fields like decimal 1, decimal 2, date 1, date 2, float 1, float 2. So really that's just a very big table that can store any kind of data. And what we do by creating a table mapping is we apply a view over the table which translates those meaningless names into business names, so that when the end user comes along, then I can see names like ISIN, market value, and effective date. So it's not that clever really. I think the clever bit of the old system was the load logic, how it would handle reloads and merging and so on. But we really wanted to take this further, and so that's really how this whole idea of this data warehouse factory came along, which we've called data stores. So looking at data stores, the basic concepts are that a user can upfront define the fields of a table. So they can say, I want a field called ISIN, I want a field called market value, and I want a field called date. And they can also apply a whole lot of metadata, like this field is mandatory. You can apply the data type. You can tell the system whether it's a key field. And at the table level you can define the different types of load patterns that you want, like a strong load, a weak load, versioning loads, and so on. You can also define that certain fields are part of an index, etc. And this is the clever bit now, is that the system, which is a factory, takes all of this metadata, all of this information, and it generates everything you need. So it would generate staging tables, loading stored procedures, data warehouse tables, indexes for those tables, foreign key constraints, primary constraints, unique constraints. It will also generate editing screens if it's a relevant table. You obviously can't edit facts, but you can edit stuff like funds and attributes. So this is very optimized for what the user wants, because we're not just using a very general broad table, we're generating exactly what is needed. So there are really some very big benefits here. Some of the benefits, obviously it's a very flexible data structure. A business analyst or a slightly technical user can go and set up a data warehouse table. They can also specify the data types, so without having to go and use what's there, they can say I want a decimal with 5 decimal places, or I want a date with no time. So you can be very specific, which helps you with your business rules. It saves a lot of space on disk because the table is only as big as you need it, and this also speeds up queries because the query engine doesn't need to go and scan through all those empty fields and empty rows. And the very clever stuff is that we can build in some complex load logic, so we can do stuff like merging and various other loads, even on fact tables. So I'll be covering that in the next session, what loads will be available. But really the general picture here is that the user defines the data warehouse tables.